Hello and welcome into another episode of Lockdown Wolves. Today on the show, gonna borrow a segment from the basketball party on Wednesday. Play Trend or Mirage about three things regarding the Wolves here lately. I also want to look at the Cavs rematch of a Donovan Mitchell-less Cavs team from just 2 weeks ago. We're gonna break the whole thing down here today. Welcome in. You are Lockdown Wolves.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Beacon. I'm the host of Locked On Wolves. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use the code, all lowercase, LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Happy Friday, everybody. Happy Timberwolves game day after having a couple of days off. The Wolves are back at it against the Cleveland Cavs on Friday night. I want to preview that matchup. That was a fun game 2 weeks ago, and we could have pretty much the same rosters available. That was right after the cat injury. Rudy was available. He's questionable. Seems like there's a chance he plays Friday. Donovan Mitchell was out, came back for a couple games. He's out again. So virtually the same matchup, possibly exactly the same matchup we had 2 weeks ago in an overtime game. So we'll talk about that later. Couple other things to get to here first, and I want to play a little Trend or Mirage, a segment I'm borrowing from our Wednesday show, the Minnesota Basketball Party show. So we'll get to that here first. Off the top, though, a big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every single day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on both Roku and Amazon Fire TV. More great local sports coverage 24/7 for free. You can download the Locked On Sports Minnesota app today. Again, Roku or Amazon Fire TV. You can also follow the show on X at Locked On T-Wolves and at B Beacon. And a reminder about the postcast. Not only do we cover your team every day here on Locked On Wolves, but we also give you an instant episode after every single game. Check out the Locked On Wolves postcast. You can find the audio right here on the Locked On Wolves podcast feed. Tonight, you'll be able to hear after the Cavs game. I believe Tyler Metcalf will be joining Luke Inman to break it down. You can also stream it live immediately following the game on the Locked On Sports Minnesota YouTube channel. Get rapid reaction to all the biggest moments with the Locked On Wolves postcast. Okay, so on Wednesdays, we do the Minnesota Basketball Party, and that is one that's also on Locked On Sports Minnesota. Midday Wednesdays, we post the audio late afternoon here at Locked On Wolves. It's yours truly. It's a show hosted by Sam Ekstrom of Locked On Sports Minnesota. We have Reggie Wilson, the KARE 11 sports anchor. We have Ron Johnson of the Ron Johnson Show. And, of course, Jack Borman, the editor-in-chief of Kane Supis, on the show as well. And it's a bit of a roundtable show, several different topics every week. This week, one of the topics Sam posited to us was a Trend or Mirage game. He listed three recent, they were all trends, but like basically, are they trends that stick, or are they just kind of flash in the pan type trends and really overall more of a mirage? And I didn't get much of a chance to expand. We ran a bit short on time, and I didn't get to dig in on a couple of them as much as I wanted to. So I'm going to revisit it. So if you listen to that show, I'll make similar points, but give a bit more color. If you didn't watch or listen to it, go back and do so, because this was just one of I don't know, technically 3 segments, but we covered a lot of stuff. We talked a lot about the Ant Dunk this week on Wednesday. We talked about lots of stuff. So go back and check that out on Wednesday, or this past Wednesday, I should say. But anyway, Trend or Mirage, let's get into it. The first one that Sam Ekstrom posed to us was Jaden McDaniels' offense. And he wrote this question after Monday's game, when Jaden had a rough offensive game. I think before the Tuesday game, when Jaden McDaniels actually had a really good offensive game. So we answered this question on Wednesday morning following a really strong Jaden McDaniels performance in that Wolves comeback against the Nuggets that still resulted in a loss, but was an exciting comeback nonetheless. But overall, the question is a legitimate one. And I talked about Jaden McDaniels on Wednesday's regular Locked On Wolves show, the post-game pod. Just because this was only the second time we've seen him score 20-plus points since mid-January, and only the 5th time all year he scored more than 20 points in a game. Not only that, he had missed 20 straight 3-pointers, and I believe that was actually 21 or 22. Actually, dating the last time he'd made a 3-pointer before Monday night's game in Utah was the Cleveland game 2 weeks ago. He went 0 for 5 against the Lakers, 0 for 4 against the Clippers, 0 for 2 in the first Utah game. Missed his first 4 3-point attempts against Utah in Salt Lake City on Monday, and then made that meaningless buzzer beater that ticked off the crowd and the Jazz players and everything. But it, again, kickstarted him to go 9 of 13, knock down 4 threes, and drop 26 and 6 against the Nuggets in that comeback near win on Tuesday. So the question that Sam posed on Wednesday's show was, are Jaden McDaniels' offensive woes a trend or a mirage? And I had a bit of call it a more pessimistic take than the other guys. Jack Borman was decidedly more positive about Jaden. Ron and Reggie both kind of said some form of like, hey, as long as he knows his role, he'll be fine. They just need him to be a 3-and-D guy. My take is certainly more pessimistic than Jack. I've always been pretty hard on Jaden's offensive game. And what I said on the show was, I thought he was a net neutral at best last year offensively for the Wolves. And at times, I thought he was pretty obviously a net negative offensively. But he reached a point last season where, I mean, like, he finished the year shooting effectively 40% from 3, and he was such a good defender. He was obviously an overall impactful, positive player for the Wolves. And I thought a pretty net neutral offensively. This year, though, he's taken a bit of a step back. His 3-point volume is up, but he's shooting more of those like 6-footers where he floats to his left at about 5 to 8 feet away from the rim. It's a tough shot. It also means he's getting fouled less. And a free throw rate for a guy who is relatively low usage anyway is not that significant, but it does add up. I mean, if you just want to look at it this way, free throw attempts per game, he's shooting 0.7 free throw attempts less per game. I mean, that's not that far away from 1 free throw attempt per game. And if you're shooting 74% from the free throw line, you're sacrificing a point. I mean, what? My quick math that I think is correct is telling me that, like, you're sacrificing a point every couple of games, right? If you're rounding, nearly sacrificing a free throw attempt a game and shooting 75% from the line, that's not nothing. It's basically the difference between his 12.1 point per game average last year and his 10.5 point per game average this year. So the shot selection isn't as good. The actual percentage isn't as good on increased volume. And the usage rate itself is about the same. And you add in that the assist rate's down, the offensive rebound rate is down to full point. And I just think he's taken a slight step backwards offensively. So the question again is it a trend or mirage that his offensive performance has struggled recently? And I would say it's really neither. I think it's just who Jaden is as a player. That's currently, I'm not saying he can't improve, but that's just an inconsistent offensive player. I know Chris Finch has said something to the effect of that he's a good barometer for the offense. When he's going well, the team's going well. Well, that's true, but they win when he doesn't perform offensively as well. I wouldn't say that Jaden is a barometer for the offense as much as when Jaden scores, the Wolves usually win because he's essentially like he's our fifth option in a lot of cases. Really, he's fourth option, but turns into a fifth option at times for the Wolves. So when he's scoring, that means things are going really well. And I don't think it necessarily means that the offense is better because that it's, I wouldn't call it a barometer, right? You look at Jaden's best games this year and basically, like, I'm just kind of scrolling through his game log. Very rarely does he score in double figures and the Wolves lose. Right. But that's not, I don't think it's because of what he gives the offense. I think it's because if he's knocking down threes, it's a completely different dynamic. But when teams like the Lakers are daring him to shoot the ball and he's scoring 10 points on 17 shots, that's an issue. And it's not because the Wolves offense doesn't have good ball movement. It's because he's missing shots and teams are daring him to shoot. So they're loading up on Ant, packing the paint against Rudy, whatever that might be. And that's what happened, for instance, in that Lakers game, nearly 2 weeks ago. So I don't think it's either. I think Jaden's just a streaky offensive player. And if he could just knock down the open catch and shoot threes like he did for much of last season, Again, he was 40% from three last year. This year, he's a shade under 35% for the year. For his career, he's a shade under 36%. So I think there's some improvement to be made. I think he very likely could pull that number up a bit more over the next month. But as of right now, in his, as a 23-year-old in year 4 in the NBA, this is who he is as a player. He's just wildly inconsistent. But if he could consistently knock down catch and shoot threes and keep being himself defensively, which he's had some ups and downs there this year, which is relative, of course. He's still a phenomenal defender, one of the best in the league. But at times, I don't think he's been as dominant as he was for, much of last season. All right, so all that to say, I don't think his offense is a trend or mirage. I just think this is who he is right now. If he knocks down some threes, he'll be okay. And yeah, that's going to help the Wolves offense a great deal as we move into the playoffs and the home stretch of the regular season. All right, a couple more trends or mirage questions before we head into the Wolves Cavs preview. We'll do all that here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our friends over at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with over 3 million members. They're the easiest and most exciting way to play DFS. It's just you against the numbers. You pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch your winnings roll in. It's demon time on Prize Picks. You can now win up to 100 times your money. With as little as 4 correct picks, you can turn $10 into $1,000. Demons and Goblins are the newest and most exciting way to play at Prize Picks. Squares marked with red demons or green goblins get you different payouts. You can now win up to 100 times your money, again, with as little as 4 correct picks. Plus, you can also play alongside some of Prize Picks' favorite players like rapper Meek Mill and comedian Andrew Schultz. You can also find community plays from under the promo tab of the app to view entries from some of the biggest names in the Prize Picks community each week. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Use the code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA, code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Do you watch Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? And if you do, I'm sure you've had to turn down the volume with all the shouting. Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, a quick one in terms of trend or mirage that we discussed on Wednesday was Jordan McLaughlin's three-point shooting. And again, I was a little more pessimistic than everybody else. I'm sorry for being the realist of the group. Someone's got to do it. And it's funny because I see myself overall as I think a realist is the best way to say it, right? Like the numbers don't lie in terms of the historical context of things. It doesn't mean that there aren't trend lines that can show that things might change in the future. But like, this is a good example of, hey, Jordan McLaughlin is shooting 45% from three this year. Last year, he was 31% from three. The year before that, 32% from three. The year before that, 36%. As a rookie, he was 38% on slightly higher volume per game, right? The way I put it on Wednesday's show is Jordan McLaughlin shot less three-pointers in his career, attempted less three-pointers in his career than Anthony Edwards has this season. Ant has attempted 448 three-pointers this year. Jordan McLaughlin's only attempted 395 for his career. So the whole thing is based on painfully low volume. Now, another way to look at it would be Ant's shooting 37% for three this year. Jordan McLaughlin for his career is 36% on nearly the same volume. So yeah, I mean, there's more variables over the course of 5 seasons versus Ant this season, but, I think that's fascinating. J-Mac has never attempted more than 92 threes in a game, and he's not going to get there this year either. I mean, he's attempted 64, which if he stopped playing right now, would be the least he's ever attempted in a season. And who knows, like, as this team gets healthy, will he even be in the rotation? The answer is probably not. Once Rudy and Nas come back, like, I know that they're bigs, but I think his minutes get squeezed out because Kyle Anderson moves back to the bench and he operates as a playmaker, along with Monte Morris and Nickeil Alexander-Walker. All that to say, I kind of feel like saying neither about this one too. Like, it's a trend in the sense that he's shooting lights out. Like, he's like some crazy over 50% over the last however many games McLaughlin is. But he's not a 45% three-point shooter. He had shot 38% from three, 76 shot attempts as a rookie. That number the percentage has gone from 38% to 36% to 32% to 31%. Now this year it's jumped all the way back up to 45.3%. Again, it's not a number that's going to stick. He did, by the way, miss his only three-point attempt on Tuesday against Denver, but he was 3 for 3 against Utah, 1 for 2 the game before that. He didn't shoot any against the Clippers. The game before that, all 9 of his shot attempts against the Lakers were threes, and he made 4 of them. So, yeah, he's been lights out recently. There's no denying that. And by definition, that's a trend. Is it a real thing? Like, does it stick? Is he going to shoot 40+% the rest of the way? I hope so. It seems unlikely. I also don't think he's going to get the opportunity. I think that the overall volume has to be considered as well. The last thing we talked about was the Timberwolves losing to good teams at home. And I want to give a bit more context on that because, again, I didn't get the chance to really expand on this much. This to me is, and I guess I should explain a little bit of what this trend is that Sam was getting at. So the Wolves' home record was very dominant early in the season. It has not been lately, and it's decidedly they're 2 or 3 games worse at home than both Denver and OKC, who are currently just ahead of the Wolves in the standings. But the Wolves just lost to Denver. They lost to the Clippers and Kings at home last homestand, and the Bucks last homestand. Going back a little further, they lost to the Magic at home in a 1-possession game. If you go all the way back to January, they lost consecutive games at home to OKC and Charlotte. Obviously, the Charlotte one's a bit of an outlier. But the question from Sam is, what's the deal with the Wolves losing at home games to good teams? And my answer, he asked us to give 60 seconds. So my answer was basically, well, I mean, they play everybody good at home, and sometimes you lose to good teams. That's the best way to put it. They were winning a lot of close games early in the season against good teams and bad teams at home, for that matter. Like, look at early in the season. The Wolves beat Denver at home. It wasn't that close of a game. They beat Denver fairly easily at home. They beat Boston in overtime, which was a massive win. They, I guess the Sixers were shorthanded. They beat OKC by a bucket at home. They beat a lot of bad teams by a lot of points. They beat the Lakers by a bucket at home. They beat the Lakers by 7 on another occasion. So they beat the Clippers by 4 in January at Target Center. So they won some close games against good teams. And now they're losing close games at home against good teams. There's far more variance in these close games than any of us, and then I shouldn't say any of us, than our human nature is like willing to admit, right? I mean, do teams get hot? Do teams get cold? Do they hit these streaks where they can't win or can't lose, can't hit the broadside of the barn, whatever? Yes, absolutely. And there is something to that in terms of the human nature. But they're all worth the same, right? So whether they'd gone every other all season long or won a bunch of close games early and lost a bunch of close games here lately, it's just law of averages, right? Is another way of putting it. And then on top of that, you also factor in the injury stuff. Obviously, against Denver, I don't know, that's a tough game regardless. And on a back-to-back, I expected them to lose even if Rudy had played. But Rudy didn't play, and obviously no Cat, and they lost that game. The Clippers game, they lost by a single point. They were relatively healthy for that one, but it just a miserable game. They lost in overtime to the Kings. They lost twice at home to the Kings, right? So there's a lot of other factors that play into this, and I'm not concerned about the Timberwolves, home court advantage or non-home court advantage. I think they have one, and I think they're good at home. I think that they could beat good teams at home. They have done it. They still have a good home record. It's not anything that's, we need to be alarmed about. They've still only lost 9 home games. The only 2 teams with a better record than them in the conference at home are the Nuggets and Thunder, who are both really, really good at home. Also have played a lot more home games than the Wolves. I mean, the Nuggets have won 5 more and lost 3 less home games. OKC's won 5 more and lost 2 less home games. In the Eastern Conference, Boston's insane. They're 32-3 at home. The Bucks and Magic are the only other teams that have lost less than 10 games at home. So the Wolves still have, by percentage, the 5th best home record in the entire NBA. And by overall win percentage, the Wolves have the 4th best record in the entire NBA. So And by the way, they also have the best away record, the best away from home record of any team in the league, the most away wins of any team in the league. So I'm not worried about it. I'm not worried about this trend. I do think it is a mirage. So I will give an answer on that one. All right. I want to close with talking Wolves Cavs. Wolves Cavs was so entertaining. 2 weeks ago, exactly. It was a ton of fun. So I want to kind of unpack what happened in that game, refresh everyone's memory, talk about what to expect in this one. We'll get to all that here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our friends at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, let's talk Wolves and Cavs on Friday night. Setting this thing up, both teams should be healthy for this game. No, let me reset that. Neither team is healthy for this game. I said that completely wrong. What I meant to say was both teams should be in the same spot they were 2 weeks ago. Hopefully Rudy plays. Officially, Rudy Gobert, Anthony Edwards are both questionable for this game, as is Naz Reid with the head injury. No real indication on, any likelihood on any of those guys, although it sounded like Rudy was genuinely a game time decision on Tuesday. And so that would make me think there's a decent shot he plays Friday. The Wolves obviously need him against Jarrett Allen and the Cleveland Cavaliers. The last time these teams played, that was the Rudy money sign game 2 weeks ago. And Jarrett Allen had a big game against the Wolves. Jarrett Allen attempted 1 billion free throws against the Wolves in that game. We'll talk more about that in a minute. So also for Cleveland, no Donovan Mitchell the last time these teams played. He's going to miss this game too. He missed the last one with I think it was a knee and or leg injury. And then he missed a couple more games after that. He played last weekend in a couple of games and then is now out with nasal surgery. And he'll probably be back in like a week or so, but he's not going to play in this one. And very likely this lineup for the Cavs will look the same. Likely no Max Strus still, certainly no Evan Mobley. So the Wolves, I guess Naz would be the wild card here. If Naz doesn't play, that would obviously be a big deal. And he did play the last time these teams faced off and had a monster game, by the way. He had 34 off the bench the last time these teams played because Rudy ended up fouling out. Rudy only had 7 points. He did have 17 boards, but Jarrett Allen killed the Wolves the last time these teams faced off. Allen had 33 and 18. He got to the line 21 times, which is by far a career high in terms of free throw attempts in a game. I believe he attempted more in the second half than he had in any total game this season. 21 free throw attempts. Jarrett Allen had 33 and 18. He shot the ball from the field 19 times. Darius Garland was really good. Nobody else really hurt the Wolves consistently in this game. Karis LeVert had 15 off the bench, but it took him 15 shots to do it. The Wolves actually in this game played pretty well defensively up until the overtime. And that, of course, came after the Rudy Gobert foul out. In case you missed it, quick reminder, the Wolves are up by 1 with, 20-some seconds left of regulation. Gobert makes the money gesture behind Scott Foster's back. Natalie Sago, one of the other officials, sees it, calls a technical. The Cavs make the free throw. It now goes to overtime after missed shots from each team. It goes to overtime, and the Wolves lose handily in overtime, end up losing by 9. And the Wolves defense fell apart in the overtime. And while it wasn't great throughout the game, I thought it was okay. It was really good in the fourth quarter. It was a physical game. The Wolves shot 14 less free throws than Cleveland, which feels more fluky than anything else, so I'll leave it there. Cleveland only out-rebounded the Wolves by 1. Minnesota only lost points in the paint by 4. And again, no Karl-Anthony Towns. And Jarrett Allen went off for the Cavs. Now, points in the paint obviously isn't going to include those 21 free throws that Jared Allen shot. That also went a long way for them. And then the other thing is the Wolves shot miserably from outside the arc. 27%, 8 of 30. Ant was 0 of 7 on three-point attempts. Took Ant 27 shots to get 19 points. Remember, this was the game that came the day after the Pacers game where Ant had the game-saving block, hit his head and everything else on the rim and backboard. This was 24 hours later. So a bit of an excuse for Ant to have a tough shooting night. So all that to say, the Wolves had a lot of things go against them in this one. On the road, too. On the road, traveling on a back-to-back. Obviously no cat. Rudy fouls out, up 1 in the final seconds. The technical allows the Cavs to tie it. Ant scores 19 on 27 shots, misses all 7 threes. Conley goes 0 of 5 from 3, which is also very weird. So the Wolves starting backcourt goes 0 of 12 from 3. They shoot 27% as a team. They still only lose the rebound battle by 1 and the points to the paint by 4, despite Jared Allen getting 33 and 18 and shooting 21 free throws. So a lot of things going against the Wolves. And yet they still go to overtime and had a chance to win it and should have won it in regulation. Right now, the Wolves are at FanDuel 5.5-point favorites against the Cavs. And this is without knowing the actual injury status of, or I shouldn't say injury status. We know they're questionable, but whether or not Rudy, Ant, or Nas will play. My hunch is Rudy and Ant. I mean, Ant's going to play. I feel pretty confident about that because he tends to play when he's questionable, as we all know. I think Rudy will probably play. Nas, I feel like, is probably more truly 50-50, which is what questionable technically means. So we'll see. But the Wolves as 5.5-point favorites at home, a couple days of rest. The Wolves, the Cavs injuries, again, if these teams are the way we think they'll be and the way they were a couple weeks ago, the Wolves should have the advantage there. And 5.5 points feels about right to me. In terms of, I should also note, the Wolves didn't play Wednesday or Thursday. The Cavs played at home against Miami Wednesday. It was a 1-game homestand. They had 3 games on the road, 1 at home on Wednesday, and now they're back out on the road. They only lost by a bucket to Miami. I don't know. I mean, the Wolves have a slight rest advantage and travel advantage in this one as well. In terms of style of play, the Wolves actually won the fast break points the last time they played Cleveland. It's one of the few teams the Wolves could easily just, especially now without Towns, the Wolves have been running more. We talked a lot more about that on Thursday's show. I think they should run even more than they have been. But the Cavs are bottom 10 in the league in pace, bottom third of the league. And, they actually turn it over a fair amount. They're 19th in turnover rate. So the Wolves should have opportunities to turn defense into offense in this game and get some easy buckets in transition, which, Cleveland's a top 5 defensive team. They've been one of the best defensive teams in the league all season, especially since the holidays, since the first of the year. And sure, no Evan Mobley really hurts that, but they still have Jared Allen. They still have some defenders on this team. So for a Townsless Wolves team to keep pace offensively, even a Cavs team with no Donovan Mitchell, they have to turn defense into offense. They have to try and speed the game up. As weird as that sounds, play at a faster pace, play a little bit more of a, what I was, the buzzword from Thursday, a high variance game, and they should be fine. They should win this thing by multiple possessions. I would say I would take the 5.5, honestly, or say that the Wolves would cover the 5.5. I think the Wolves probably win this thing by 7 or 8, at least. It feels like a prime Wolves Friday night at Target Center, maybe rolling to a big blowout win over a shorthanded, a good opponent, a win that's going to look good in the team's schedule log, game log, right? Albeit a shorthanded Cleveland team, but a good Cleveland team. Still, nonetheless, that you just lost to 2 weeks ago, a bit of a revenge game, hopefully, for Minnesota from that bad overtime loss. So I think the Wolves will win this one. I think they'll roll. As I mentioned earlier, the live postcast will be on Locked On Sports Minnesota immediately following the game. Luke Inman and either Tyler or Jack from Canasupis will have that for you live. They'll have the audio here on the Locked On Wolves audio feed if you don't watch it live on Locked On Sports Minnesota. Reminder also, if you can't watch the game, you can listen to every bucket for Wolves Cavs on the Hometown broadcast with our friend Alan Horton on SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just search Minnesota Timberwolves to catch the game live there. All right, that's all we have for you today. I'll be back, of course, on Monday, the Friday night game, and then the Wolves play again on Sunday. So Monday's show will actually be the post-game pod following let's see, following Wolves Warriors. The Wolves host the Warriors at 6 p.m. on Sunday. So, again, the postcast will get you covered from Wolves Cavs Friday night into Saturday. I'll have a show Monday, which will be the post-game pod from Wolves Warriors. And, of course, there'll be a live postcast after the game on Monday as well. So be sure to tune in then. A big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. You can also watch the show on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on Roku and Amazon Fire TV. And you can follow on X at Locked On T-Wolves and also at B-Beacon with 2 B's, 2 E's, C-K-E-N. Of course, a reminder about the Locked On, the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and it's also now available on the Amazon Fire TV and the Amazon Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. As a reminder, Locked On Wolves is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Of course, the Locked On Network is your local experts on all the biggest stories. Once again, I'm Ben Beacon. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast, and we'll catch you next time.